Hey, so just in case you need names or anything, I'm Sarah Hopper. I currently am majoring in forensic psychology with a minor in criminal justice. The option that I chose for this project was option number 3, missional integration. So for the first part of it, I'm going to kind of share with you what my future career looks like based on so far where I feel God is calling me. I want to be working in a federal agency, preferably the FBI, but who knows what opportunities will come up and where God will take me. The ideal career within the FBI for me would be a special agent, which, in case you don't know the exact specifics, because let's face it, television is definitely not giving anything any justice in terms of being accurate. But I hopefully would be living here in Washington. Not sure what kind of unit I'd like to work in. Maybe some sort of crimes against children type of unit or anti-terrorism unit. I feel like I really could be living for mission in that way because that is what God has been calling me to since probably around 5th grade. While there, because it's a federal agency, it's really hard to respect the cultural norms of the organization in which I'd be working. That's because as a federal agency, they have to make sure that there is no perception of wrongdoing or giving favors to specific religions or anything like that. So for them, they're very strict on their policies. They want everything to stay really professional, and it might have changed, but they generally don't want you sharing your religion unless specifically asked. And even then, sometimes they have policies about if people can even ask you. So it makes it really hard. So while there, I would be respecting the cultural norms by living out the mission of God and how I treat other people. And that would be, I believe, enough for people to start questioning why I live that way. And it is a way that I can be ministering to others in a sense without actually going against the cultural norms of the FBI. I would be able to build redemptive relationships with the people I work with also through this way, because for them, they get to see how someone who's a Christian acts. And oftentimes, and it's really unfortunate, but people associate Christians with hypocrisy, hypocritical Christians that none of us want to be. None of us want to be associated with. And so by being there and giving them a good example of what a Christian looks like and how it has such a strong impact on how I treat others, whether it's the people that we may be arresting and investigating, or even just them, it's something that slowly can build a relationship in which I can grow closer with my coworkers, become friends, to the point that, have them over for dinner, and maybe the question comes up there, because at that point, it's not against the policies for someone to ask me outside of work, hey, why are you so different? And that's honestly such a great question to be asked. And I really hope that that comes up when I'm working with the FBI, or if I work with the FBI, to clarify. Once it comes up, it's something that I hope I could have ongoing discussions with, and maybe even invite my coworkers to church. And a lot of times in some sort of law enforcement agency, it's hard to keep a cool head when dealing with people who, for instance, might have committed some sort of crime against a child. That's something really hard. And so being able to display how people should act is something that I hope then influences them and helps to start building that redemptive relationship to where I can really share the gospel with them. Kind of branching off of that, but building a redemptive relationship with the customers I work with, which I feel like is very different compared to some of the other careers sure you get from these videos, but it's honestly really hard. I know as a police officer, there's some kind of easier things. Like you could be listening to a Christian radio, nothing wrong with that. So that's something that I could be doing, but it's more going to be shown in how I interact with them, because whether they see it on the news or it's just kind of the perception of law enforcement, a lot of people expect to be treated awfully, to be treated like they're less than human in a sense, whether they've committed a crime or not. And if they have committed a crime, they probably expect that. And being different and treating them still with the same respect and courtesy that all human beings deserve is something that I really hope opens the door to the point that maybe they ask if I can visit if they're in prison or something like that, where I can kind of just show them how people should be interacting with them and how different it is to what the world says. And we see on the news people talking about treating those that are arrested with dignity, police abuse of power is awful. But on the flip side, you also see people who have committed awful crimes and people always say that they don't deserve the same courtesy and respect. As a Christian, I know that everybody deserves respect. Everyone should be treated that way. Whether or not I agree and would not agree with what they've done, it doesn't mean that I should treat them any less because of their sin. We're all sinful. The way that it represents in people is going to vary from person to person, though. While working in this, I feel like I can leverage my vocation, my job as an FBI special agent for kingdom impact and how, once again, different I act. The news focuses on all the time all of the police abuse of power and just everything wrong with law enforcement, the sin nature that shows in humans, they focus on it within law enforcement, especially because law enforcement, like any other public service job, is given a lot more power, a lot more trust from the public, and it's our job to uphold that trust and show them that they can trust us. Unfortunately, that's not where we're at as a society right now. For the most part, I can talk to almost anyone outside of this campus and ask them what their opinion is on law enforcement, and they will probably say some unkind words. That's been my experience. Working somewhere as a security guard, someone asked what I wanted to do, and I shared, and he legitimately was like, "Oh, that's awful. You're such a good person. Why would you go to that career?" That's where we're at as a society, and I don't want that to be where we're at. I want people to be able to see me working there, whether I'm on the news, or just word of mouth. I want to make a difference. I want to be able to turn people's perceptions around and allow them to start trusting again. And when they wonder why they're starting to trust again, it's because good people are changing things. They're going into the profession and they are changing up how it is so that everyone is shown the same respect and courtesy that they deserve, whether they've committed crimes or not. In doing so, I'm witnessing to all those around me, whether it's people just watching on the news, people that are my coworkers, people I'm arresting, my own family. I mean, it's definitely scary to have the public's eyes on you in that regard. At least I imagine the idea of it sounds scary. But at the same time, it's such a platform. And I really, really am looking forward to when I graduate and God can start using me in that way. Whether I end up in the FBI or some other agency, who knows? No matter what, I want to be there witnessing and making a really big impact for Jesus Christ. I would share the gospel with people I work with. I've kind of already talked about it a little bit earlier, but I would share it with them mainly by just kind of subtle ways of having on Christian music and type things that are kind of along the line where it still is in line with policies, but it opens the door for questions later on. I would want to share the gospel with them outside of work by maybe taking them to church and sharing mainly how God has worked through my life, the passions he's put on my heart. There's just so many scriptures in the Bible that talk about not showing injustice. I've spent the last year and a half here talking a lot about them, how we're called to treat others fairly. We're called to love one another. We're called to so many different things that we don't really see that happen all much in law enforcement. We see more so of advocating for the widow, for the ones who need help, those verses. But we don't see the ones that are really focused on love. And in doing so, and bringing up these verses, I would just share the gospel with them in that way, opening up that door about, hey, Jesus went through all of this and he knew he was going to go through it, and he loved everyone. He called them out in their sin, sure, but he did love them. So I would share the gospel lessons in a different way, especially because when I'm talking with someone who's in law enforcement, we kind of see things more as a people don't change. And I want to be able to share about how Jesus dying on the cross allows us to have eternal life with him. It's that bridge. It allows people to change when they accept him into their heart. So I'd focus more on it from that sense specifically. And I disciple them just by going through the Bible bit by bit with how it speaks to treating others, especially because in law enforcement, it's you're in a very different position than you are as maybe a teacher or a janitor, something like that. It's different. Each career is going to require it in a different way. And so I disciple them by just kind of going through the different books of what Jesus says about how to treat others. And the New Testament's a really good way to go through it. So I'd probably focus on that because it follows Jesus's life and how he was treated and how he treated others, which is a really good example of how we should be treating others in our day-to-day lives. I'd also want them to participate in a small group with me. I don't know what church I'll be at the time, so I can't speak to the exact small group, but it'd be great if they could become involved with those around in similar age groups or similar walks of life. I think it'd be great if there's some sort of small group or life group for law enforcement, but that's something that would only probably be occurring at a very, very large church. So it'd be more of a one-on-one and letting them kind of almost shadow me in a sense while also explaining why all these things are really important to me. And I hope that would then allow her to kind of soften and ask more questions and be genuinely curious about why this is so important to me. In the long term, it would hopefully at that point, they can also start discipling others. That's ultimately where I want whoever I disciple to be. But in the short term, it would depend on the person, to be honest. But I would like to think that I could have a lot of one-on-one in-depth conversations with them about how we are called to treat others.